Imagine me there while you are here. I'm thinking of you, and distance is nothing. I'll go through the whole world to be with you. Imagine no line, right here where we are. Imagine it's gone, but distance is nothing. I'll breathe in my hands, the sunlight just for you. Imagine no line, right here where we are. Imagine it's gone, but distance is nothing. I'll breathe in my hands, the sunlight just for you. Imagine me there while you are here. I'm thinking of you, and distance is nothing. I'll go through the whole world to be with you. Imagine no line, right here where we are. Imagine it's gone, but distance is nothing. I'll breathe in my hands, the sunlight just for you. Imagine me there, I'm thinking of you. I'll go through the whole world to be with you. Imagine me there, I'm thinking of you. I'll go through the whole world to be with you. Imagine no line, right here where we are. Imagine it's gone, but distance is nothing. I'll breathe in my hands, the sunlight just for you.
Gaze into your eyes. Oh, I love the way you smile. Oh, I'm forever reaching out to let you catch a glimpse of me. Turn your eyes in my direction. I want to let you see, 'cause you belong with me, and I try to be alive when the earth goes dark. You make one up with me. Leave your heartache in the past, 'cause I'll be the one to set you free. 'Cause you belong 'cause you belong with me.
Hi guys! Sorry if you heard that meow, my cat is sitting on my lap right now, and she's really loud. Yeah, she's a loud one. Wanna say hi? You can say hi. Say hi, princess. Hope everybody's having a wonderful day. There's cat hair everywhere. She wanted to snuggle, so I figured she could snuggle while I was on here with everyone. We are going to read Leviticus 18 and 19 today, I think. Yeah, more fun Bible stuff about the laws and regulations that God wants us to, God wants the Israelites to follow, not us, obviously. Because we don't live in that era anymore, and we don't live in a time where there's really any reason to believe in a God, so. Yesterday was kind of a rereading of things because it was repetitive about, skin diseases and things like that, and what you needed to do for, the priests had to do in order to make sure people didn't, spread plagues and things that they had. Or, we're going through a pandemic right now where we have to be, cautious about what we do and wear masks and, use hand sanitizer and stuff like that. And back in those days, they didn't really have, medical doctors. They didn't have people who knew what was actually happening to people's bodies. And so they would go to the priests and they would talk to them about it and figure out, if this scab looks this way or this skin disease is a certain way, you need to put them outside the camp because they don't want to spread it to everyone. Because it was a tiny tribe, and, if they get sick and everybody gets sick, we're going to have a major issue because people are not going to be able to be healed. Sorry. Cat hair everywhere. Okay. So we're going to read 18 and 19 today. I don't know how many verses are actually in Leviticus. I should look at that because... Oh yeah, we were talking about not eating blood too. Which is interesting. Bake it into some bread. You want some blood bread? Now I have to know how long Leviticus is because I don't know how long it's going to take to get through this. Especially when I'm only reading 2 passages a day. Oh, we're not that far away. There's only 27, and we're almost to 20, so we should be done by next week. That's exciting. Yay! There's so many, different things you have to look at when it comes to Leviticus. I don't know, what Numbers is about at all. I only know that, Leviticus is a lot of the rules and regulations and, how they prepared the tabernacle and things like that, but I don't know if I've ever actually read any Numbers. I feel like that's one that they don't really talk about in church. There's certain verses, you always talk about, everyone knows, the 23rd Psalm. That is a huge verse, whether you're in the church or outside of the church. Most people know that. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. I will fear no evil, it's that kind of stuff. And I don't know if that's just because it's kind of become popular within culture, or if that's just a verse that a lot of people cling to because it's so well known. It's the same with like John 3:16, where, you'll go to a sporting event and people will be holding up signs of John 3:16 because everyone knows John 3:16. Even if you're not a Christian, even if you weren't raised religious, like, you might not know it word from word, but you know what it basically says in that Bible verse. And people can look at that and go, oh yeah, I know what John 3:16 is, because that's just something in our culture that most people just know. And so it's interesting to me because I can't think of anything in Numbers that has ever been brought up like that. I feel like Numbers is not one that is often talked about, and I could be wrong, but I just don't remember reading a lot of Numbers growing up in the church. So we'll see. Maybe it's just another book that doesn't have a lot of, story to it, so they just don't talk about it as much in the church setting. But who knows? I don't know. I'm sure there's other, like, verses and things that I have no idea even exist in the Bible. And, I know there are verses that people often talk about that they say are in the Bible and then end up not being in the Bible, because people just attribute certain things to the Bible, even if those things aren't actually there. So that's, I don't know, it's interesting to me that I just thought about the fact that I don't feel like Numbers is a Bible book that stands out when you're talking about, growing up in church and bringing up Bible verses. You don't think about these things till you're outside of them, and then you realize, oh, yeah, this doesn't make any sense. Like, why didn't we read a lot of Numbers in church? All right. So I'm reading the NIV version. We're going to do Leviticus 18 and 19. What is today, Wednesday? Okay. Yeah, so if you read 20 and 21 tomorrow, and then 22 and 23 on Friday, then we should be done with Leviticus by next week. Yeah. But then we get into Numbers. Like I said, I don't know what's in Numbers, so we'll have to see. It could be just a repeat of Leviticus for all I know. Leviticus seems to repeat a lot too, so. Alright, here we go. NIV, Leviticus, I'm starting at 18. The Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them, I am the Lord your God. You must not do as they do in Egypt, where you used to live, and you must not do as they do in the land of Canaan, where I am bringing you. Do not follow their practices. You must obey my laws, and be careful to follow my decrees. I am the Lord your God. Keep my decrees and laws, for whoever obeys them will live by them. I am the Lord. No one is to approach any close relative to have sexual relations. I am the Lord. Do not dishonor your father by having sexual relations with your mother. She is your mother. Do not have relations with her. Do not have sexual relations with your father's wife. That would dishonor your father. Do not have sexual relations with your sister, either your father's daughter or your mother's daughter, whether she was born in the same house or elsewhere. Do not have sexual relations with your son's daughter or your daughter's daughter. That would dishonor you. Do not have sexual relations with the daughter of your father's wife, born to your father. She is your sister. Do not have sexual relations with your father's sister. She is your father's close relative. Do not have sexual relations with your mother's sister, because she is your mother's close relative. Do not dishonor your father's brother by approaching his wife to have sexual relations. She is your aunt. Do not have sexual relations with your daughter-in-law. She's your son's wife. Do not have sexual relations with her. Do not have sexual relations with your brother's wife. That would dishonor your brother. Do not have sexual relations with both a woman and her daughter. Do not have sexual relations with either her son's daughter or her daughter's daughter. They are her close relatives. This is wickedness. Do not take your wife's sister as a rival wife and have sexual relations with her while your wife is still living. Do not approach a woman to have sexual relations with her during her uncleanliness of her monthly period. Do not have sexual relations with your neighbor's wife and defile yourself with her. Do not give any of your children to be sacrificed to Moloch, for you must not profane the name of your God. I am the Lord. Do not have sexual relations with a man as one does with a woman. That is detestable. Do not have sexual relations with an animal and defile yourself with it. A woman must not present herself to an animal to have sexual relations with it. This is a perversion. Do not defile yourself in any of these ways, because this is how the nations that I'm going to drive out before you became defiled. Even the land was defiled, so I punished it for its sin. And the land vomited out its inhabitants. But you must keep my decrees and my laws. The native-born and the foreigners residing among you must not do any of these detestable things. For all these things were done by the people who lived in the land before you, and the land became defiled. And if you defile the land, it will vomit you out, as I vomited out the nations that were before you. Everyone who does anything that is detestable, such persons shall be cut off from their people. Keep my requirements, and do not follow any of the detestable customs that were practiced before you came, and do not defile yourselves with them. I am the Lord your God. Bum, bum, bum. Okay. Various laws. That's an interesting title for that. Just like, these are the other laws that you need to just follow, and we don't have a specific place for them, so we're just going to say various laws. The Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the entire assembly of Israel and say to them, Be holy, because I, the Lord your God, am holy. Each of you must respect your mother and father, and you must observe my Sabbath. I am the Lord your God. Do not turn to idols or make metal gods for yourselves. I am the Lord your God. When you sacrifice a fellowship offering to the Lord, sacrifice it in such a way that it will be accepted on your behalf. Bleh. It shall be eaten on the day you sacrifice it, or on the next day. Anything left over till the third day must be burned up. If any of it is eaten on the third day, it is impure and will not be accepted. Whoever eats it will be held responsible, because they have desecrated what is holy to the Lord. They must be cut off from their people." I do wonder if that's like a religious thing, or if they really just don't want people eating it days after because they've seen people get sick, and they don't want people to get sick. And, they think that sickness comes from, I don't know, gods or magical beings, so maybe they think that the reason that they get sick is because, God says if you eat this 3 days later, you're gonna get sick. But I have to wonder if that goes back to, the medical things that we know now, and germ theory, and, over time, if you eat something and you leave it out for a few days, like, it's gonna spoil, and it's gonna be gross, and, there's gonna be bugs and things on it, and you could get food poisoning, or, a lot of other different things, so you have to wonder about that. If that is a big reason why they decided to put this in here, is because they didn't want people to get sick and have those medical issues that they didn't know where else they would have come from. So instead of just being like, oh, medically, this is going to make you sick, they're like, no, God gave you this disease because you ate it because he said not to. That's just an interesting thing that I see. And, I have worked in food service for a long time, so I know all of, you have to prepare things a certain way, you have to store things a certain way, you have to keep things at a certain temperature, and just thinking about, just the tests and stuff I had to take in order to just prep people's food and keep it safe and keep it sanitary so people don't get sick and don't have issues with that. It really makes me think about, from my perspective, that looks like they're just trying to protect themselves because they're getting sick and they don't know why else they would be getting sick other than, God put a curse on us because we ate the food 3 days later. When you reap the harvest of your land, do not reap it on the very edges of your field, or gather the gleanings of your harvest. Do not go over to your vineyard a second time, and pick up the grapes that have fallen. Leave them for the poor and the foreigner. I am the Lord your God. Do not steal. Do not lie. Do not deceive one another. Do not swear falsely by my name, and so profane the name of your God. I am the Lord. Do not defraud your neighbors or rob them. Do not hold back the wages of a hired worker overnight. Do not curse the deaf or put a stumbling block in front of the blind, but fear your God. I am the Lord. Do not pervert justice. Do not show partiality to the poor or favoritism to the great, but judge your neighbor fairly. Do not go about spreading slander among your people. Do not do anything that endangers your neighbor's life. I am the Lord. Do not hate a fellow Israelite in your heart. Rebuke your neighbor frankly, so you will not share in their guilt. Do not seek revenge or bear a grudge against anyone among your people, but love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord. Keep my decrees. Do not mate different kinds of animals. Do not plant your field with 2 kinds of seeds. Do not wear clothing woven by 2 kinds of material. If a man sleeps with a female slave who is promised to another man, but has not been ransomed or given her freedom, there must be due punishment. Yet they are not to be put to death, because she has not been freed. The man, however, must bring a ram to the entrance of the tent of meeting for a guilt offering to the Lord. With the ram of the guilt offering, the priest is to make atonement for him before the Lord for the sin he has committed, and his sin will be forgiven. When you enter the land and plant any kind of fruit tree, regard its fruit as forbidden. For 3 years you are to consider it forbidden. It must not be eaten. In the 4th year all its fruit will be holy, an offering of praise to the Lord. But in the 5th year you may eat its fruit. In this way your harvest will be increased. I am the Lord your God. Do not eat any meat with the blood still in it. Guess, anybody who's eaten those raw steaks. Do not practice divination or seek omens. Do not cut the hair at the sides of your head or clip off the edges of your beard. Do not cut your bodies for the dead or put tattoo marks on yourself. I am the Lord. That is one I always, growing up, that was a big thing in my house. Like, don't put tattoos on yourself, because I went to a church where there's a lot of people tattooed. Like, they didn't see anything wrong with that, but, like, I grew up in a house where my family was very, like, anti-tattoo and anti, putting anything on your body because of this verse. My parents were very strict about that and were very just like, no, you don't do that. Like, God said not to do that. But it's interesting. Like, I hate needles, so I don't have any tattoos, but that's by choice because I hate needles and I don't even like getting my blood drawn, so I will probably never have a tattoo. But it always fascinated me that so many Christians are okay with that because it's part of what they claim is the old law. But if God is the same today, yesterday, and forever, like, are you gonna get in trouble for putting a tattoo on your body? Like, those kind of things. I often wonder about that, and, what excuses Christians actually give for that, because I haven't really, other than, the law is not the law anymore. Do not degrade your daughter by making her a prostitute, or the land will turn to prostitution and be filled with wickedness. Observe my Sabbaths and have reverence for my sanctuary. I am the Lord. Do not turn to mediums or seek out spiritists, for you will be defiled by them. I am the Lord your God. Stand up in the presence of the aged, show respect for the elderly, and revere your God. I am the Lord. When foreigners reside among you in your land, do not mistreat them. The foreigners residing among you must be treated as a native born. Love them as yourself, for you were foreigners in Egypt. I am the Lord your God. Do not use dishonest standards when measuring length, weight, or quantity. Use honest scales and honest weights, an honest ephah and an honest hin. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt. Keep all my decrees, and all my laws, and follow them. I am the Lord. And tomorrow we get to read about punishment for sin. That's exciting. Yeah, it's always interesting to me to read those laws because, the Jewish perspective is you still have to keep all those laws regardless because God doesn't change and God, God is one. God made the laws. The laws are forever. But, Christians take that and they twist that around because they think that they have the truth. And that the truth is, to them, Jesus came and changed all those laws. Which, it's so weird to me because, it even says in the Bible, that those laws are a standard forever. I don't remember where it says that. But yeah, that's a big reason why a lot of the Jews didn't accept Jesus. Well, I don't know. I don't know if Jesus was a real person or not, but even if he was, I think Jesus really did follow a lot of that stuff, and he was a Jewish man. And I think the Jesus we get in the Gospels is a lot more of what Paul thought of Jesus, because Paul's Jesus was not the earthly Jesus. He was a spiritual Jesus who came to him on the road when he was walking. And, there's debate about, if that was a hallucination or, he had some sort of episode and thought he saw something that wasn't actually there or heard something that was not actually there. There's a lot of debate about, what Paul actually saw and what Paul actually heard, and if it, was real or not. From my perspective, I don't think any of the things that Paul said or saw were real. I think there were probably medical issues that were not dealt with and things got twisted, but because of what I've read and because of what I've seen and heard and looked into, Paul and Peter really were not on the same page about those things. Peter knew Jesus. He knew, Jesus wanted people to follow the laws. He wanted people to do what God wanted them to do. And that was a big thing, is that Jesus was not the Jesus that Paul followed, because Paul followed a Jesus that said, you just have to say a prayer and you're forgiven. And that's not what the original, Bible said. The Torah and the Tanakh, very, very clearly states, you need to follow this God that you believe in, and if you don't, bad things are going to happen to you. But I think a lot of the Jewish stuff, it's not about, I don't want to talk for Jewish people, because I'm not Jewish, and I don't know a lot. All the stuff I know about Judaism is from being self-taught, but from what I have seen, a lot of the Jewish perspective is about following God while we're here on earth. It's not about some magical place you go to after you die, and it's about, following the God that you serve here on earth and that affects your life. It affects, whether you're cursed or whether you're blessed or whatever. And from my perspective, from what I've seen from the Jewish people, it's a lot about the life we have here now and not about some future life. Whereas growing up as a Christian, it was your entire life was spent trying to please this God in order to go to this magical place when you die. And that was your life. Like, your life, you didn't focus so much on the earthly life because you were so, not obsessed, but just like, you were brainwashed to believe that your entire way of life has to be to reach that end goal. You're running this race. This is how they say it in the Christian church. You're running this race and you want to get to the finish line. And the finish line for Christian is death. Like, eventually you're gonna die. And when you're dead, you're gonna be at the finish line because, you did what God wanted. You followed Jesus. You get to go to heaven. But there's so many issues in between that where it's like, well, what does it take to get to heaven? Because you have all these different ideas floating around. Because you look at Paul and it's about salvation through, not through works, but through faith. Which faith is just believing in something that has no evidence to back it up. So you have to believe that something that you can't prove and that you can't even know exists. You have to follow that to get to this place that you don't have proof exists. And it's a weird concept when you look at it as an outsider, because you're just like, these people are so obsessed with getting to that finish line, with, dying and going and being with Jesus, that they miss out on so much of this life that we have. They miss out on, enjoying pleasures that we have in this world, enjoying things that, you will never get to experience again. And regardless if heaven exists or not, if God created everyone and created this planet with all these good things and then says you can't do them, then what's the point of living? Because in heaven, you're not gonna have an option to just do whatever you want and live the way you want. I mean, we can see that through the Bible. The idea that there was an angel in heaven that rebelled because he really didn't like this God. That puts into question everything people claim about God. Is like, oh, we would love him so much, there's no way we would, want to leave him or want to not be with him. But the whole, angels not wanting to be with him and falling from heaven or whatever, I know a lot of that is messed up mythology within Christianity, but you do have to wonder, because, growing up I was taught, like, Satan was an angel that worked for God, and he didn't like God. Well, why didn't he like God? We don't get into those deep conversations. We don't get into that critical thinking and go, well, what's the reason behind him not liking God? Because you're always just told it's rebellion, but why would you rebel against a loving Father who gives you everything you want and who loves you unconditionally and who allows you to have the life you want to live? Because to me, that shows that there are flaws within this religion and within your God that are not being talked about. And instead of deep diving into that and going, well, he was selfish, or he just wanted to do his own thing, or he didn't want to be in heaven anymore. Well, if he didn't want to be in heaven anymore, what makes you think we're going to want to be in heaven forever? it blows my mind to think about that, because it's like, at what point do you look deeply into that and go, yeah, he was just in the wrong. Okay, but why was he in the wrong? That critical thinking, well, and that's the thing with the church, is they don't critically think about these things. You're not told, like, oh, let's deep dive into why he did this, and let's deep dive into, maybe the problems with God or the flaws in God, because there are no flaws in God, according to them. He is this all-perfect, all-knowing, all-loving, everywhere, all the time God that you can't question and you can't critically think about, because he doesn't want you to do that. And when you put up that wall and you put up that inability to question and to look into these things, you just believe what you're taught. You don't get to expand on the deeper meanings within the Bible that people don't think about and don't talk about. And honestly, I think having a church where you actually, like, deep dive into the text and, like, deep dive into what, these things actually meant to these people during this time, like, that would fascinate me. I would do something like that every Sunday, because it's not, about following this imaginary being or, doing what he wants or doing his will. It's about, really diving into the text and critically thinking about it and thinking about the time period it was written, and that kind of stuff fascinates me. And I would get up on Sundays just to do that, because, having that ability to think about those things, not just the Bible though, like any religious text, I think really deep diving into those things and seeing them from a perspective that's not always, theology, where we're not diving just into theology, but we're also diving into, culturally, what did this mean for these people? When they say this in the Bible, we interpret it this way, but how would they interpret it in their time? And I don't know, I think that would be a really great class to take. I'm sure they do a lot of that in, like, world religion classes, but my world religion class was at a Christian college, so it wasn't, like, super critical thinking and deep diving into those things. I mean, we have people here on YouTube that do that kind of stuff. That's pretty cool. And I guess you could go watch those videos. And I think having this community too really helps that, because you can deep dive into those things and you can ask questions and you can, seek out those things and find out what was actually happening versus what, Judaism or what Christianity or what Catholicism or any of those other things teach these verses as something that's just something you can use in your life theologically versus, thinking critically about them. I feel like I'm just repeating myself, but, like, I would love to learn, like, Hebrew, because actually looking at the verses from, that perspective and actually knowing what they say originally versus, our Americanized version, I think would change a lot of how I see the Bible, because I know a lot of stuff, like, is lost in translation, and I think it would be really fun to learn that and to know what, they originally said and what they originally intended to say. But I don't think I have time right now to, learn Hebrew, so maybe there's a channel I can find later that talks about that kind of stuff, and I don't know. I love watching Digital Hammurabi about kind of, that kind of stuff, because they do deep dives on some of that stuff, and that's really cool to me. And I don't know, maybe I can find a Jewish YouTube or something that, goes more in depth on the Hebrew stuff. I'm just babbling now. Babble, babble, babble. Thank you all for coming and supporting me. Shout out to all my patrons. Thank you so much for supporting me here on Twitch and on my YouTube. If you want to be a patron and support me monthly, you can do that on patreon.com/overprotectedatheist. If you want to support me by just being here, in the chat, talking, listening to me, thank you so much for, taking time out of your day to read along with me. And, even in the boring parts of the Bible. If you haven't seen me on Twitch, I'm on Twitch at overprotectedatheist. I'm on YouTube, overprotectedatheist. OP_atheist on Twitter. My website's overprotectedatheist.com. Facebook, overprotectedatheist, and then Instagram, overprotectedatheist. I think that's all my online stuff. Hopefully. Thank you all for coming. I hope you have a wonderful day, evening, night, wherever you are. And I hope I can see you guys again tomorrow as we continue with Leviticus. And hopefully we will be finished with Leviticus by next week and get into Numbers. We're not going to make it through the Bible, obviously, in a year. But at this point, I think, doing it slowly over time really helps us, deep dive into those things and think about those things. And I'm really enjoying doing this and, having my friends in the chat and stuff, so. Sorry. Have a great day, and thank you all for coming. Bye, friends. Whoops.
Make up your own rules as you go. Stay only true to what you know.